Well, hi there. My name is Dave. Welcome to the question of the month for the October 2024 edition. And we were asking you a question. A very simple question. Come on. The question simply was, what was the last podcast that you recommended to someone and why? And we had a few responses. Thank you to everybody that responded. And I'm collected them all here together for you. We're going to put this out into the world for you to enjoy, along with beautiful piano music. Right. Yeah, I love music, by the way, just so you know. If you haven't been able to figure that out by now, I don't know where you've been, but I love music. So anyways, again, the question of the month, what was the last podcast that you recommended to someone and why? So I'm going to kick it off because, hey, I'm the host of the show. I can do whatever I want. You can't stop me. So anyway, one of the podcasts I've been recommending probably most often is the Mel Robbins Podcast. Now, why am I recommending the Mel Robbins Podcast? She is an amazing superhuman. I don't know how she comes up with this stuff. Her episodes are amazing. She is just so cool. So I want everyone to go to Mel Robbins Podcast and press play. At least one episode for me, for Dave. I get nothing out of this, by the way. But anyway, I just want you to go press play on one episode. One of the most recent episodes I heard was Mel and her husband were on together talking about 30 years of marriage and 3 things each they've learned in 30 years of marriage. It got quite emotional. I was kind of welling up thinking of my relationship with my wife. And I'm like, oh, this is so real, so cool. You got to go check out the Mel Robbins Podcast. Okay, that's it. I can't tell you anything else, but go check out the Mel Robbins Podcast. Okay? For me. So, when you hit play on Mel's podcast, this is what you hear. You ready? This is what you hear.
Hey, it's your friend Mel, and welcome to the Mel Robbins Podcast. Today, I am doing something I've never done before. I'm sitting here on my screened-in porch in southern Vermont, and I've been married for 30 years. My husband's name is Chris, and I have never done what I'm about to do today. See, I've been getting a lot of questions recently about how Chris and I have made our marriage last. And so I decided what we would do is we would each come up with 3 lessons that we've learned the hard way after being together for 30 years. Now, here's the catch. I have no idea what Chris's 3 things are. Chris has no idea what my 3 lessons are. So I have no idea where this is going, but I do know this. It's definitely going to go somewhere unexpected. And it's also going to open up some unexpected breakthroughs for you too.
So that's Mel. Definitely go check it out. Link in the show notes. Go check out Mel. I put a link to that episode that I'm talking about there as well. A great episode. Definitely listen to it with your partner. I think you really enjoy it. Let's get to the submissions. And we'll even include a little clip, maybe, of each of the podcasts mentioned. So thanks, everybody, for responding. Here we go with Bill. Bill, take it away.
Welcome. You've got mail.
Hi, Dave. This is Bill Monty. I'm the host of 3 podcasts, Tales from South Florida, which looks at growing up in the South Florida area in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Also, Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older, a podcast that talks about aging in America, my experience in getting older, and hoping to pass on some helpful tidbits to people about health, Medicare, Medicaid, and just some old guy wisdom. And finally, on YouTube, America 451, which is a political podcast looking at the question, hey, maybe it's not just Republicans or Democrats, maybe it's everybody that's causing the problems. But when you asked about the October question, what podcast have you recommended lately? The one that comes to mind for me, and I'm kind of like support your local business kind of person, so in a way I try to stay away from celebrity podcasts, but I have to say that the one that I recommend to people is Paul Giamatti's CHINWAG.
Hey, Chinwaggers, it's Stephen Asma, and today we're revisiting one of CHINWAG's early gems. You might remember our fascinating conversation with retired FBI criminal profiler and internationally recognized homicide expert Candice DeLong. She's also the host of the hit podcast Killer Psyche. Just ahead, Paul, Candice, and I dive into the labyrinthian world of serial killers and the intricacies of criminal profiling. But before we dive in, I want to tell you about another incredible podcast hosted by Candice DeLong that you don't want to miss.
He doesn't talk about being movie star Paul Giamatti. The podcast is about all the strange and weird stories and urban legends and myths around the world and in America. So he talks to psychics. They talk about Bigfoot. They talk about UFOs and something called the New Jersey Devil and ghosts. And his take on it is so much like he's just the guy in the room going, wow, really? Really? That happened? Or that happened to you? Or tell me more. Who would have thought? And if you're like me, a big fan of Paul Giamatti, it's just kind of getting to know him on that level. So I recommend to my friends when they want to know what a podcast is all about, I do recommend Paul Giamatti's CHINWAG. And I'm recommending it to you too. Until then, everyone, be safe and be kind.
Hey, Dave, this is Jonathan with the Afterlight Fictions podcast. More on that in a second. So to answer your question of the month, I recently recommended Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
And remember that we are not descended from fearful men.
It's Hardcore History.
Like many of you, I am a fan of ancient mythology. The stories of creation, or how human beings came to be, or tales that involve gods and heroes and monsters, and sometimes just regular people who go through interesting sorts of events or travels or whatnot. And oftentimes these mythological stories are meant to impart lessons. We're supposed to learn something from them. What to do, what not to do. You're tempted to almost say at the end of all of them, and the moral of the story is, right? What are we supposed to learn from this?
So hopefully people are hearing that like, oh yeah, I forgot about that show. Like I haven't listened to it in a minute because it's been around a while. And so he does a really good job of covering, historical topics like the name would suggest, but he does it in a way that's really engaging. He's got a good radio voice, if you want to call it that. So he's easy to listen to. He's passionate. He's well researched, and they're hours long. So someone was asking me, "Hey, what's good for a long car ride?" And I was like, "Perfect. This podcast. Listen to this." So Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, fantastic. Highly recommend it. My podcast that I mentioned earlier, so Afterlight Fictions, that is a storytelling podcast, and so that one, if you are interested in listening to something that can either kind of help calm you down from your day or maybe help put you to sleep or just spark a little creativity, I've got original stories and familiar ones that you might recognize on that show. Some are in more of an audiobook format or a little more well-produced with music and sound effects. So that's Afterlight Fictions. Thanks, Dave.
So there you go. 2 responses. Thank you guys for responding to the question of the month. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. We put this out for one reason, for this podcast. We want people to promote their show. We want people to come on and tell others about what they do in podcasting. And that's probably the best way to grow your show, is word of mouth marketing, letting the world know about your show, one person at a time, one podcast at a time. And that's why we do this every month. So as you listen to this, you're like, oh, dang it, I didn't do it again. Well, we'll keep trying. So November is going to be another question of the month time for you to respond. Check for the new episode coming out November 1st. You'll hear about what the question of the month is and how to respond and how to participate. And again, the reason why we're doing this is for you. So if you're interested in getting free promotion for your podcast, why would you not want that? I have no idea why you would not want to tell people about your show. But if you do, respond to the question of the month for November. Hey, hint, hint, you listening. I would love to know about your show, whether it started or it's just an idea or it's up and running. I want to promote you. I want you to be promoted through the question of the month. That's the whole reason we're doing this. howtopodcast.ca is all the information about the show, about me. And if you're interested, I would love to have you respond to the question of the month. Thank you so much to our two gentlemen for responding. Go check out some new podcasts. All the links, as mentioned, in the show notes. Go there, listen, follow, subscribe, do all the things, because that's how we help each other. Thank you so much for being part of the How to Podcast series and for responding to the question of the month. Take care, everybody. Happy November and happy National Podcast Post Month. 30 episodes, 30 days starts November 1st. There's a lot of podcasts coming your way. Hope you enjoy. And if you want to listen to something in addition to the How to Podcast series, the Dad Space Podcast, a podcast for dads by dads, also participating with 30 episodes in November, and Living the Next Chapter, a podcast where we bring authors on to introduce them to readers and hear the story behind the books that they've written. Also participating this month of November in National Podcast Post Month. So that's 3 podcasts, 30 episodes each, 90 episodes going out this month alone in the month of November, which is more than most podcasters do in a year. All for you, all free. You never have to pay a penny for this. Hope you enjoy. Hope you listen. Try to keep up. Thanks for being here. Keep podcasting. Keep being you. We need more of you in this world. Take care.